Hello, it's Denise from Women Beyond a Certain Age, and this is part two with our guest, Pamela Nelson-Munson, because you can't see it if it's not in front of you, so I need to mention the hyphen. No, Pamela, if you've listened to the podcast, the first podcast, Pamela and I went to seventh grade in high school together, and we've kept in touch. We've been able to see each other at reunions, but I think that Pamela's story is so extraordinary. We have so many common denominators in our life. But basically, Pamela went to seminary school, had 3 children. Her husband is also a pastor, and then went to culinary school. But even before that, she started taking a culinary program where she was in her town. And the thing that's amazing to me is what we're talking about today is how she interwove her culinary degree into her ministry and how important food is. That's what I got out of it. Hello, Pamela. You're welcome.
Hello, Denise.
So glad to see you. So I hope with that long introduction that I covered some of it, because I just think that you have an extraordinary story. See, I think most women have extraordinary stories, but we never hear them.
I think my mother had an extraordinary story and I didn't delve into it.
I know. That's one of the things we're going to talk about at the end, about one of the things you brought up about listening to the stories of people when we didn't have time. I regret that I didn't ask my grandfather more things about his early life. But, I was a kid and you don't think you're going to need to know that. So, Now, darling, talk to me. Tell me this. You've written here. Eventually, I found a culinary art program at the community college, and you take it for 2 years.
Yes. And towards the end of the first year, I told the chef instructor, I said, yes, I think for summer I would like to work on a train. That sounds fun. And he looks at me and he goes, you're too slow.
Oh! Now, okay.
Which, I didn't get at the time, but I soon learned what he meant. So I said, I've got to go out and I've got to get a job. I have to learn. I have to be in a restaurant. And so I looked around and I said, well, if I'm going to work, I want to work in a place that I would want to eat and that I think is like outstanding. And so I found that restaurant. It was, probably, I think they had 50 covers, maybe plus the bar, but they did everything from scratch. And that's what I wanted to do. And so I sent in my request to the owner, and he, and actually I sent menus because I'm really good on menus. So I sent menus, and he called me, he goes, send me your resume. And I'm going, well, that would be 0. So he said, come in for an interview. So I came in for an interview. He actually had a psychologist develop an interview instrument because he only wanted to know 2 things. He could have cared less if I could cook my way out of a bag. He wanted 2 things. What was your work ethic and were you honest? That's all he wanted to know before he hired you.
Now I have to tell you, that's fabulous. When I had to hire people, whether kitchens, catering, whatever, one of the questions that people failed, Pam, all the time. So you had these kids that different things, and they were, of course, interviews. They were on their best behavior. They'd put on shoes and not carrying the beer can, but they into the meeting. But I asked a question. I'd say, if you saw another employee stealing, would you tell me?
Yes.
And I can't tell you how many people dropped the pencil and didn't finish for the interview because and that told me, I used to always say, and people would say this to me about my staff, and I'm so grateful, but people say, God, Denise, and besides your staff, they're so nice. How do you do that? How do you train them? You must. I said, I hire nice people.
Yes, right. No, that's right. And so he said, okay, I want you to interview with my head cook, who was like 19, 18, I don't know, 14. He was really young. He's interviewing this 47-year-old woman, and after a week, he finally calls. He goes, well, gosh darn it, sorry, you can't work full time, but we'll keep you in mind. And so that got me mad. So I composed a letter to the owner, and I said, thank you for the interviews, and I still love your restaurant. I hope you'll keep me on your short list. And in closing, here are the top 10 reasons why you should still hire me.
Oh,
and
I love that.
I don't remember all 10, but I remember the first one, or number 10, the lowest was, I'll never be as cheap as I am now. And number 1 was, better for me to work with you than in competition against you.
Brilliant. So brilliant. That's incredible. And he hired you.
Yes.
And what, did you work in the kitchen, or were you a hostess at that job?
No. He hired me, put me in the pantry, and the pantry was like crazy. I mean, we did like 7 plated appetizers, all like amazing plates, 7 plated salad dressings. We did the amuse-bouche. We had to come up with 2 different dressings every night besides the regular ones. And then we did sides for the front, for the line. And then we had to do 7 plated desserts. And so it was like crazy. And the first night I'm there, I'm going, okay, I'm working with another woman in pantry, and okay, that's, learning curve, but I can do this. At the end of the evening, she says, you're going to be on your own tomorrow night. And I'm going, what? And I'm tearing off sheets of paper toweling, and I'm drawing what the plates are supposed to look like, so I'll know the next night. It was so stressful that the next 2 weeks, every time I drove to work, I cried. I said, I cannot do this, but I did it. Yes.
In culinary school, I was like one of the oldest. I was 33. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I would say later to people, the year Jesus died on the cross. And honey, so a lot of I was old. A lot of the kids that were in culinary school at 84, they'd been cooking in restaurants, but they were in their 20s. And there were so few women, but they were all, maybe they were women that had already gone to college, and now they were, going to culinary school. But I would walk into the bathroom, we'd go into the bathroom, wash your hands, on your break, and girls would just be crying. That's all it was. Oh. Girls were just sitting on the floor in their chef's outfits, crying.
Yeah.
And I would like kick them with my ugly shoes and say, you cannot go out there if you're crying.
That's right. Yeah.
I said, you can cry in here, but bitches, you cannot cry out in the kitchen. There is no crying in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And it was really hard. But I don't know that there's a day that I started a new job, and even when I was the executive chef, Pam, that I didn't either go in the walk-in and scream or go out to my car for a minute and cry. Do you know what I mean? Because it's tough. I bet those 2 weeks, it's horrible. How lovely that they let you have a staged position with her for one night.
I know.
Oh my God. Now, so how long did you last there?
I started in the beginning of summer, and I actually till December, because I was in school and I had kids at home, and I finally went to the owner and I said, I can't, because I was commuting like an hour to school. I said, something has to give. And he goes, okay, but I want you so I can call you when I need somebody. I go, okay, that's fine. That's fair.
Lovely.
Yeah.
It sounds like you learned tons there.
I learned so much, and I loved every minute. And actually, Denise, just not to toot my own horn, but that in 2 years later, the chef owner said, would you ever consider giving up the church? Because I'd bring you in as a part owner. So, yeah. But I said, and he said, I know, I've lost you to God.
God, Pam, I have to tell you, when you say all these things, when people would want to come to work with Cindy and you may not know this, Cindy was an intern from the CCA.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She came and never left. Okay.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, yeah. 20 years. A lot of the times, honey, I fired interns after the third day, and I wasn't being mean, but I would just say to them, little tiny company, 3 or 4 people, for me to stop when you're so slow, as you said, or so, and you have to know how to cook to be a food stylist. I can teach you to style, but I can't go back and teach you how to cook. Yes. Okay. It's it can't happen. So people would say, but Cindy came, and I am not exaggerating, within a couple of days, I thought, oh my God, this kid's got it. Do you know what I mean? That's nice. All it was. I thought, this kid has got it. And then she never left. Yeah. And we took other interns, and she and I, we could do a whole podcast on that. Yeah. We had some that were wonderful, some we kept, some that went on to bigger and better things, and they should have. Do you know what I mean? But once in a while, we would get one that just didn't work out. And I always used to say, and I wasn't mean, but I used to say to them, I'm telling you, this is a learning lesson.
Yes.
And I'd say, so I don't think you have what it takes to work in a kitchen. I don't think you're ever going to be a chef. I don't think you can be a food stylist. Whatever it is, we haven't tapped into that yet. But I say this to you.
Well, good for you.
I'd say with all the love in my heart, prove me wrong.
Okay. Yeah.
But there were people that just they'd already gone to cooking school. They'd already invested $30,000 or $40,000 at the Cordon Bleu, and they were not going to make it.
Okay. In my experience, you've got to have both. The cooking school, it's very measured. You learn step after step after step. But working in a restaurant, that's where you get your speed. That's where you get, the long view, and that's where you learn about costing and using the product that you have.
And really, I learned more working. I started in the pantry too, but the kitchens that I worked in, I just watched a lot. Yeah. I learned more about management in the kitchen than I ever learned in business classes that I took, or being a broker, real estate firm. Well, it was so different, but and to this day, Pam, when Kenny and I are having work done around the house, anything.
Right.
My husband, the AAA attorney, says things like to Pedro and the deal memo. Pedro saying, I'm going to paint the wall. What are you talking about? Yeah. You know what I mean? And of course, but I'm just saying, when we've had licensed workers working here and stuff, Kenny, it's not his bag, because he worked in the rules in the court of law are so different. Yes, whereas and he's saying, well, how much are they going to get done today? And I say to him, oh, that's not the attitude you want to take. That's not the attitude you need to take to make this crew work in an environment. I learned more about being a good manager, running a kitchen crew, than any other time in my life, and just human behavior and how to speak to people if you want to get something done.
Absolutely.
And how the people treated me.
Well, and to watch, the owner, who is the chef, he stepped aside and let another person take head chef, but he was a chef, but he was the owner. And I used to say that he could take 2 nickels, rub them together, and get a quarter. He knew how to, I was like, my mouth was open. We would take we would fillet the salmon, then we would take a spoon and we would spoon off the carcass. And then we would take that, cook that on the flat top, and then mix it together with leftover baked potatoes and sour cream and everything. And then you get salmon patties, and then you make some creme fraiche. And he would, what year was this? This was 2000. He would serve 2 of those in 2000 and get $13. It was like, and that was from leftover product. I was like, this is genius.
Yeah. You know what? And that's exactly right. God, that's a great comment. That's such a great comment. In one job, when I was very broke out of school, and I couldn't get a job yet. I couldn't get a job in a kitchen yet. I was working on it, but I couldn't get a job in a kitchen. There was probably one woman in LA working in all the good kitchens. I knew her. Her name was Jeanette. Wow. I couldn't get a job, but I worked in a fish market. And as my mother would say to me, under the table, I got cash. And my mother would say to me, So you went to so you went to college, then you went to culinary school, and now you're a fishmonger? And I say, yes. And she said to me, oh dear. And that's how she was saying, but you know what I learned? Man, you take those salmon and that head, I boiled the heads and all that squid, and you had to squish the meat out of it. Sometimes the eyes pop, but you squished the meat out of those cooked heads. It wasn't a pretty job, but that meat made the best salmon mousse I've ever made.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
But that's the French. I mean, that's really, I hope everyone should have that experience. If you haven't worked for a French chef, hopefully the chefs you have worked for, because the French, there was no, I don't think any, and the Swiss are great, but no one's better than turning a sow's ear into a silk purse than the French.
Absolutely.
And they could do it while they were drinking brandy, smoking, and screwing the hostess. Okay, so let's be honest about that. Now, so it's true, we know this. So you go back, but now all of a sudden, you're teaching too. You're teaching at the local college.
The college wanted to start a new food and wine program, and it wasn't going to be full time to begin with. And so they asked if I would create it, and I go, wow, that's an opportunity of a lifetime. But then they also offered me a church. The church offered me a church in the same town as my husband, which is unusual. And it was like, I wasn't going to take it, but there was this night when I was wrestling, about ready to be Jonah thrown to the whale. And I thought, I think I'm going to skip the whale. So I said yes to the church. I told my chef instructor, and he said, okay, but will you teach? So I taught 2 terms a year and at night, and I taught culinary fundamentals, and I taught wine and sauce making.
Fabulous.
And it was so good because it was at a community college. So I had students who were like 17 all the way up into senior adults. And there were some that couldn't get into the culinary program yet, so they took this to begin with. And I could see, I could see myself. Yes, they were slow because it's like, it's like being in your home kitchen. It's like, yes, I have all the time in the world. Let's enjoy this. And it's like, no, you're on a timeline and you need to organize. So I loved teaching for those 10 years. Yeah.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Now, so tell me now, I'm moving you to 2012, where you apply for a Lilly Foundation grant.
Yes, in the church, and this goes broad, anybody who's in a church, the Lilly Foundation gives out, I think, 50 grants a year to pastors for renewal. And they don't want you to do something religious. They want you to renew your soul. And you can take up to, I think, 4 months and do this. And so I got a grant for $50,000. And that $50,000 allowed my husband and I to go to Ireland. And I went to Ballymaloe Cookery School. They have an intensive 12-week, that is like the course to launch. Kids in Europe take that course to launch, and they can get a job after that course.
That's right.
We lived in Ireland for 3 months, and it was on this 100-acre organic farm with cows and chickens and everything. And there were 60 of us from countries all over the world. It was incredible, and it did renew my soul. It was the best thing I've ever done.
See, I remember on Facebook telling about it. Do you know what I mean? That you had gotten it. And then you texted me once or twice, or we texted each other a couple of times when you were like in the midst of finals, and the menu that you were preparing stuff. I remember thinking, oh Lord, it was amazing. But honey, I knew Dorina Allen.
You did?
Yes.
Whoa.
Because she used to come to IACP.
Oh, wow.
I knew the original is the original Dorina, and then her daughter started showing up afterwards.
Oh, so, you not Dorina, Dorina's mother-in-law.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So you knew her. Okay.
Yeah. And she was, of course, we're going back to 1990.
Right.
probably the early 1990s, because she would come to ISUP to get people to come to her cooking school. Do you see what I'm saying? Oh, yes.
Okay.
And people would say things like, God, who's going to Ireland to go to cooking school? So, it's like a full circle of life. But then you started hearing about Ballymaloe, it was, and then very smartly, a lot of my friends that were in PR, of course, Carrie Goldbutter, people like that, Pamela, started bringing groups to the school to show what they did. Okay. So I'm very familiar and very impressed. And how fabulous that you got that grant. How smart of you to put it together.
Absolutely amazing. And the church was totally supportive. They were excited for me because the grant also covered so that they could have relief, somebody be there. But they were excited for me. So it was just a win-win all around. Yeah.
And then, but when you came back, you went back into a church.
The same church. I came back. I was in Ashland, Oregon. And so I came back into that church. Yeah. Yeah.
But you knew at some point soon you'd be retiring.
I did. I was on track to retire at 66, normal retirement time. And then I was offered another church back in Eugene, a big church. And the bishop was really twisting my arm. And I looked at it as a challenge. It's like, this is my swan song. And I'm ADD too, Denise. So there's another thing. And it's like all my life, it's like, if I just apply myself a little bit more, I know I could do a perfect job. And so it's like, this was my opportunity. And so I just plunged into that church with 200%. And it was good. It was a very good experience. And I ended up spending 3 years. So I retired a year later, but that was okay. And we kept our house in Ashland and then we moved back to Ashland. So yeah.
So smart again. I have to tell you, Pam, there's a ADD, they used to just be ADD. Now it's ADHD.
Right.
And of course, when we were kids, nobody.
No.
All the teacher ever said is Denise is just delightful, but she talks too much in class. Or
exactly.
Or if only she applied herself.
I know. I have to tell you just a cute little story. Please. I was going through my dad's stuff, and there was one of my report cards from 3rd grade, and the teacher had written, Pamela needs to apply herself more, and he wrote back, Pamela usually rises to the level of instruction.
Oh, bless him. Oh, bless him. You know what? I understand why they said it, but it was before people even knew what ADD, Ritalin hadn't been invented. They didn't realize, it's just what it is. I process things very differently, Pam. And when you sent me these pages example, I have to read this 2 or 3 times. I skip over things. I don't see the word. I see the bunny. I see the sparkle. Yes. So people don't understand that if they have not suffered with that. Do you know what I mean? And it's a thing.
And we didn't even know what it was. I mean, we didn't know what it was. I mean, I started in about like the 2000s. I started reading about it, and I was identifying it in other people, in my daughter, in my secretary. I was identifying it, and then it finally was like, oh, I'm pointing my finger. There's 3 more coming back at me. But what I did was I just created hacks all my life. To be able to get over the humps of what the inattentive brings.
It's people have no idea. I just always, and I was always just grateful that I went into food.
Yes.
Because kitchens are all they are is organized chaos. So I felt so comfortable there. Didn't bother me at all. Fire happens, someone gets stabbed, there's blood, the delivery's late. Okay.
And there was a tie in there because, I felt so comfortable because the kitchen is an adrenaline rush and that becomes your drug of choice. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is Sunday mornings. It's an adrenaline rush. So it was totally comfortable.
It's absolutely true. Now, I love what I want to say, and I want to read a couple of these, but I need to say one thing because I didn't say this enough in the thing. In every church that you took over, you got a convection oven in the church kitchen. And that cracks me up.
It's like, not just, I mean, we're talking the industrial kind with the pull open things, because that is such a boon to a church kitchen to be able to cook stuff quickly in the convection oven and have a lot of room. And so I would do that. I mean, Curtis got to know me really well. Oh, got another church. Yep.
You know what else? It's just the way it is. Once you had a commercial convection oven, there's no going back.
There is not. No,
no going back.
Yeah. And I have to say that, you know, the gas industrial cooktop versus a convection oven, what's more useful in a church kitchen? The convection oven.
Of course. Yeah. Of course. Now, what I love, Pam, is that on the last page or two, you wrote retirement back in Ashland. Now, I have to say this because I talk about this all the time to people. And you put modest goals for retirement.
Mm-hmm.
I say friends of ours that are whose wives are now retiring, friends from high school, friends from college, friends from Kenny's business, say to me, how was retirement? And I'm very honest. I say the first year or two was terrible for me. I was so used to the 60-hour a week. And it's just been in the last year. And so it's been almost 4 years, but I think, oh my God, how did I ever work? I'm so busy doing nothing. I'm so busy doing exactly what I want. But I have to read these because I think these were brilliant. Keep our home, which again, I never enjoyed. I had a cleaning lady, I had a gardener and stuff like that in LA, but I didn't keep our home because I wasn't there enough. I kept the studio and I was.
What I meant by keep the home was because in the church you live by and large in parsonages.
Of course.
So we bought a home in Ashland and I loved it and I wanted to be able to stay in the home.
Exactly.
Yes.
And we bought this house, sold 2 other houses. I bought this house, and it's the happiest I've been since I was a child.
Oh, you know nice. What I mean?
And I think I love being in this house.
Oh,
I love this house. I love my neighbors. They're very private. I hardly see them, but everybody waves when I walk my dogs, and there's wildlife all around me. So it's very wildlife for a golf course. Now, and you wrote, be able to buy the food I want to cook, and take 1 or 2 trips a year. Now, see, those are fabulous goals.
Well, and it's along the line, I heard you should have some goals for retirement, not just retire and die. And so those were the most important to me.
I love it. But I think writing them down, I say this to people all the time. I'm a big, Pamela, on my phone, Cindy knows, I always have a Post-it in my pocket with what I'm supposed to do that day.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
It can only be 4 things, but I'm a big list maker. So I have found that by writing things down, it helps me put it out to the universe, helps me remember that that's what I'm planning. So I think if everyone, and so if you've already been retired, what are your retirement goals for next year then? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
They can change all the time.
Exactly. Well, you have lots. I mean, every year I take stock and I do my list, and maybe I accomplish them or not, but that's
right. Now, I'm a firm believer in this because I've learned this. I may not finish the things that I said I was going to do.
Right.
And that's okay.
Yes.
So maybe I'll just do what I want to do for me and everybody else, good luck.
Yeah.
Because I started to write the memoir when I was still working, I've written 500 pages of so much gobbledygook. Some of it's good, some of it's really crazy ass shit that should not see the light.
I can't wait to read it.
But it may not be like that. Because I had a publisher interested, then they turned me down. That totally disappointed me. They said yes for a week, and then they said, nah, never mind. But to make long story short, now I'm just working on the stories that I like, and they may not be in order.
Good.
And I say to Cindy, I'm going to read some of them and put them up on the podcast. And she says, yes. So the idea of a whole book like that, I don't know. But I'll give them away. I'll just put them on. And people say, oh no, you should get one of those newsletters that people charge for. I don't care about that. Okay, I'm just going to write the stories, and if people respond to them, great. But so my whole vision of that has changed. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
And if you beat yourself up about that, you made a goal and then you don't like that goal anymore, so what?
Yeah, and hopefully at this stage in our life, we have a lot of wisdom. And
yes.
At some point we can say, you know, that goal really is not you. That was your parent, or
that's right,
something else.
Or that was the goal of someone 5 years ago, and exactly. I have changed.
Exactly.
Now, this is so important. Cooking, you wrote cooking and ministry intersection. I love this. Do I have to read this one piece and then you talk more about it? Yes, because it's so powerful.
Okay.
I used my cooking a lot in my ministry. Guess I needed the practical, tangible of food and feeding people, real, in your mouth, taste good, with the more esoteric and intangible of spiritually feeding people. Okay, I just think that is like Socrates should have said that. Plato should have said that.
Yeah.
The Pope should be saying that.
I mean, yeah, because ministry is kind of like parenting. You're doing a lot of work. You don't know if it's making any difference or not, but you do it, you show up and you keep doing it. But food, I mean, you fix the food, it's there and people eat it or they don't.
Yeah.
But also intertwined, I think, in both ministry and food is something that's very integral and important to me. And that is the whole umbrella of hospitality.
Yes.
Because that is truly serving somebody else, is you're giving something of yourself tangible to somebody else. People, I can't, if I had $1 for every time I'd be rich, that people would say, oh, you should open your own restaurant. And I said, you know, I don't want to worry about bottom line, because I know what bottom line is. I want to be able to cook as an act of love for friends and family and whomever, you know, maybe the homeless, it doesn't matter. It's just so tangible, but I needed both in my life.
It's fantastic. I think that if all I know is it struck a chord with me, but I'll tell you something, Pamela, if more people thought of their ministries like that, it may be easier for people to swallow. And I didn't mean to make that up.
This is getting deep,
it's so integral to me. It's so, all I know is this, and it's such a, hospitality is everything. When we invite friends for dinner, both of these couples, wonderful, wonderful women, but neither of them really care about entertaining that much. They're just as happy when we all meet in a restaurant. Do you know what I mean? And then it's lovely. But lots of times I'll say, no, this time we go out to restaurants, and these are like our two favorite couples, and I'll say, I'll cook.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of work. I mean, people, to entertain, it's a lot of work, but also you can make it easier on yourself by planning a menu that's grill some salmon, make a big salad, make a rice pilaf, buy a dessert if you don't, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So it's not like it has to be crazy. Right. And I think but I know this, sometimes it's just nice to be in your own home and feed your friends.
And you're not under time pressure for, clearing the space or anything like that. You can move from table to living room and all that kind of, it's much nicer. It's
so nice. And why else do you have all those dishes in the cabinet?
Right.
Why else? Yeah. You know what I mean? Sometimes I think to myself, why did we buy those couches if no one's going to sit on them? I mean, really, why did I buy that rug? Why did I care about those pictures if no one's going to see them with me and enjoy them? It's crazy to me.
Yeah.
Now, you put down here under challenges, and then this is something that I think is another thing as women, and I don't want to term it as regret, but I look back and think I was a product of my environment and of my society.
Yeah.
You wrote, thinking if I worked hard, was polite, smiled, and wore deodorant, that everyone would play nice in the sandbox. But having female plumbing in the 80s and 90s was suspect. But see, that's so much.
Yeah.
Our generation of, my mother would say things like, oh, Denise, don't raise your voice. Or when I would start working in kitchens and I would swear on the phone to her, I'd just say, oh, mother, he's a big fuckhead. That's the only reason. I mean, it has nothing to do with my talent. Or she would say to me sometimes in horror, you don't speak like that in public, do you? I said, oh, of course not. But inside I thought, I know my mother thought the reason why I hadn't gotten remarried was because I swore like a sailor.
Oh gosh, yes.
You know? Yeah. I mean, but we were raised that way. So I think that, thank God we finally found our voices. Thank God we finally realized that wasn't, you know what I mean? That just be, I think you can be polite. I think you have to be very firm.
Yeah.
And tell people what you want, male or female.
Well, yeah. And it's, you know, like you said, it does not change does not happen overnight. I might have arrived bright-eyed and bushy-tailed in 1980 at my first church, ready to slay all the dragons, but they weren't ready for me.
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah. And it took a long, I mean, it's like, what do you mean you don't like me? You know, I'm a nice person and I have talents and I will help you and I will be here. And they just said, prove yourself. So it was. And I think my kids, they alternately were enriched, but I think there was collateral damage too. I used to say that I don't care how a church treats me, just so they treat my kids well. You don't always see that right away. And you hear stories later on and you go, oh my God, why did I ever expose my kids to that? So yeah, it's a mixed bag.
I look back and when I finally was made an executive chef in the kitchen, by the way, that the man who'd been in charge, the chef that had left, was stealing thousands of dollars every year.
Oh my gosh.
Big catering kitchen. They didn't have computer programs yet. So see, they weren't tracking all the invoices. Now I'd gone to work there for a few months and I already knew that he was stealing. And the reason is when he didn't have a company party, he'd say, oh, Monday night, I'm doing a party in Marina Del Rey. I want to hire you to come help me. I knew the product had come out of his other kitchen. Okay. So, and then he had a terrible cocaine problem, which is just,
oh dear.
So to make long story short, when I got the job, now we were getting a computer program to show where the money went in the kitchen. I cut the food cost in half, like in 2 months. Wow. They heralded me as a genius, but I just knew it's because I wasn't stealing.
Okay? Right.
I wasn't supporting a second catering company out of one kitchen.
Oh my God.
So, but you know that year when they redid the brochure, they didn't put my picture in it. They put his.
No.
And then apologized because they said, well, it's just with a catering company, all our clients are movie stars and rich people and stuff. Well, they don't expect to see a woman chef. I know. And at the moment, and I kind of just said, okay, fine. And then later on, the next time it was happening, I said, I want my picture.
Yes.
I want my picture in the marketing, and I want to be a woman wearing a chef. So things happen. Now, we're moving on to wisdom lessons. You wrote some other things, but I need to tell you, the reason why we're not discussing those is I'm making you come back for another podcast, and we're going to talk about some of those because they were such good things. And I'm just saying, Cindy and I are going to put on the website and we will give you credit, the Woman Beyond. I think this is what you did by writing pages down. And Pamela called it her timeline. So it was really just, it was a timeline of your life. I think if all women did that, they would feel so accomplished.
Yeah.
I think when you write it.
Especially at our age. Yes.
Yes. All of a sudden you think, oh, I'd forgotten that. See, I do that all the time. And I've been keeping notes. When a celebrity has died recently, I all of a sudden I'm looking, I think, oh, I worked with them, and I write it down, and I remember the funny story about them.
Yes.
So it's my note taking. But this is what I love. You wrote wisdom and lessons. God is love, period. The love is broader and more encompassing and deeper and more than our feeble minds can comprehend. So don't judge. You're not God. That's cool. you don't believe it, and if you don't believe in God, that's okay. My father used to say all the time, Pamela, as he also had became very discouraged with the Catholic Church, as did my mother. So we became Presbyterians overnight.
Oh, how about that?
But we still went to church on Sunday. Do you know what I mean? It was great. We just went to Presbyterian.
Yeah.
And but one of the things my father used to always say is just believe in something bigger than yourself.
What? Perfect.
I know. I always thought that, and it helped. And I like that you wrote, sometimes you have to just show up and amazing things happen, which I find to be very true.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Some of the most amazing.
In the pantry, you showed up.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And it's kind of like that. We wrote about the Holland America Indonesian server. And it's like the opportunity presented itself. It's like we were both going to be in this, come to dinner. And what a time we had.
Please tell them, because people know that I worked for Holland America for years. You met one Indonesian, you had one friend that was an Indonesian server. And when he came to your house for dinner, how many did he bring?
Okay. So this I mean, they're all nice, right?
Yeah.
But this one was like, he was over the top fun. He gave my husband the menu one night, and there was nothing in it. And then another night he pulled out the chair and it had a sign that said wet paint. It was just, he was a fun guy. And so we asked, okay, well, what are your plans? Well, we're dry dock in March and April in Portland, and go Portland, because we were with our Portland friends. Come to dinner at our house. That was just one of those things, those random things. So there was like lapses in correspondence. And finally, I thought magnanimously, well, bring a friend so he would feel more comfortable. And so I'm planning this dinner with my friend. And then it occurs to me, he's Indonesian, he's Muslim. This is Ramadan. So then I'm trying to figure out, all of what he needs to do to break his fast and all that kind of stuff. And I'm messaging him, and I said, what's the name of your friend? Because we wanted to do a welcome board for them.
Oh, cute.
And he says, there's 5 of us. And I said, ha, ha, ha. I said, well, we can put some extra chairs on top of the car. Do you want to face forward or backwards? I mean, I thought he was giving me a hard time. Yes. And so Brian and our friend take this Subaru, and they drive to the dock, and Brian is texting me, and he says, there's 6 of them. So Brian and our friend, and then they have to fit 6, of these Holland America folks into the car. 3 of them got in the trunk, they're all like, but they were wonderful. We had such a good time, and they obviously loved each other. And I have to tell you, Denise, we tried to do a Northwest dinner, but you know what they all commented on and liked the best? I made bread, and they said, oh, this is good bread. And but it was just a fun time. We laughed. There were, out of 6 of them, 4 were Muslim, 2 were Christian. And it was just an amazing time. But that was one of those times of just showing up and take advantage of what's put in front of you.
There's a whole lot as we get older, I think, and taking risks. Yes. But I think when we were young, I didn't even think of as taking risks. Do you know what I mean? Right. I just thought this is what I want, and I'm going to go get it. But I think that as we age sometimes, and people think this about older people, you don't feel like taking risks as much for whatever reason. You don't want to fail. You don't want to be embarrassed in front of your friends, or you don't want people to think you're nuts or whatever it is. But you know what? Taking a risk, like inviting them for dinner and showing up with 6 people, I mean, that's amazing. And the only thing I've ever known about Ramadan, Pamela, when you say that, which cracks me up, is I was once working on a TV show, and the name would come to me. It was a legal, big prime drama on Monday nights. I'm sure it was called Legal something. Legal. But one of the storyline was one of the attorneys celebrated Ramadan. So I remember the prop man says to me, well, you know about Ramadan, don't you? You know everything about food. And I went, uh-huh. And inside I thought, okay. I got some cookbooks at home. But I remember it cracked me up because I remember thinking, Ramadan is now in a primetime TV show. Are you kidding me? We are getting better here in America. We are opening our eyes.
I know.
And I made lentil soup for the scene.
Okay. But see, for me, again, that goes under that umbrella of hospitality, of putting your own self aside and saying, okay, what is going to be inviting and welcoming to this other person.
I'm going to end with this, and you wrote this. People are more involved, creative, happy, and take ownership when given encouragement and free rein to follow their bliss.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, such a simple sentence and so difficult for most people to live by.
Well, and I wrote that out of the church context because, people think pastor and then everybody in the congregation. And it's like, no, we're a community, and you lift up all of the gifts and energy if everybody feels empowered.
It changes your life. I think that one of the things that I think is terribly, what I don't like, I'm in a women's Facebook group, and Pamela, most of them just say things like, I've been married 44 years and my husband doesn't talk to me anymore and I'm really unhappy. And I read more of those than the happy ones. You know what I mean? I've stopped I stopped reading the group every day because I just always, I just think to myself, life is too short. Now, I'm not saying leave him tomorrow because financially you probably can't, but you can go somewhere else. I mean, you can sleep there, but you can be out in your community. You could take classes, become a ceramicist, go babysit other people's children in a hospital. You know what I mean? Do something, but don't, because if all you are doing is sitting there complaining or thinking that your hands are tied, what a horrible way to live.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I see life as precious no matter what the life stage is. And it's just, gosh, especially like in the church, there's obviously a lot of elderly people, but I think you probably feel, as I do, as everybody does, your mental age is ageless. And you're looking out through these eyes with the whole of your life. People see you as an age, but you're looking out and you're all these ages together.
Yep. Pamela, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
When we broadcast this, Cindy asked you, if you have a picture you want to use, we would love a picture of you when you were in your robes or when you're cooking. Absolutely. Okay. I love the picture that I saw on Facebook not too long ago with a ruler when you were making croissants in your kitchen with another woman who we went to school with, who's incredible. So I just thank you so much for your time. And we tell people, if it's okay with you, we can list your email if people want to touch base with you about it.
Absolutely.
So, that's the gig.
Okay. I have so appreciated this, Denise. It's been like you and me chatting, and so it took away all the nervousness.
And you know what else? You are coming back, but I'm telling you, by putting together your timeline of your life, I think everybody should be doing that. I think we all should do it, because when you look back and you can actually read the words of the things you did.
Yeah.
It makes, it makes you realize how much you've accomplished. That's all. And we most of us just discount our accomplishments. Do you know what I mean?
I wonder if that isn't because that's what we felt from our moms.
Yes.
Yeah.
I look back now at my mother and how she handled my father's up and down. He was an entrepreneur. Some years we were rich, some years we were not rich. He tried new things and all the things that my father did. And my mother could have run IBM, but she was incredible. I didn't know at the time because she was discounted to just being a housewife.
Absolutely. I love you.
I love you. Thank you. Thank you, Miss Cindy, for everything you do. And Cindy, somehow we left it up to the Lord. Our technical difficulties disappeared. And thank you, Pamela. And thank you, Cindy. And thank you for everyone that listens. You contact us at womanbeyondicloud.com. And of course, everyone knows that Cindy takes complaints. I don't. Okay. Bye,
Okay.
Denise.
Bye-bye.
Soon. Bye. I love you.
That was fun.
Isn't that an